Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today for another exciting WordStream webinar, Mastering PPC Management for Agencies. Work smarter, not harder. My name is Chris, and I'll be moderating today's exciting webinar presentation. So to meet the experts on today's webinar, we have from WordStream, Jeff Stevens and Chris Panetta. Jeff manages agency software and consulting clients at WordStream, and that's approximately 30+ unique agency clients. He has 1 year of prior agency consulting experience dedicated to inbound marketing, and he's now fully dedicated to paid search after 6+ months here at WordStream. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Now, we also have Chris Panetta, and Chris has worked at WordStream's Managed Services department for over a year. He's managed multiple e-commerce, lead generation, and mixed clients, and he has previous experience managing SEO for e-commerce startups. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
If you'd like to take part in live blogging during today's webinar, you can include the hashtag WordStream in your Twitter tweets, Google+ status updates, or any of your other social media channels. So with that, let me hand things over to Jeff. We can get kicked off with the webinar.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining today. Very happy to have you all aboard. We're very excited to speak to agencies in particular today. It's a core group of clients that we do work with consistently on managed services, also on the software side. So this is kind of one of our first forays into talking to you guys specifically, and we're definitely happy you have joined today. So just as a quick agenda, what we're going to start with is just a discussion on workflow management. So I'm going to be discussing things like account prioritization, so how to pick accounts to manage over your week, when to talk to clients, kind of based on engagement and things like that, how to present opportunities properly to clients, and then also the act of hiring a client, which is something that you might not be considering, but it's definitely something you should look into if you are finding yourself struggling as an agency. In addition, we're going to go through ideal account structures for various types of clients that you might be dealing with. So Chris will be taking over at that point. And we'll wrap up with kind of a best practice summary. And then, of course, when we have time at the end, which we surely will have, we will use that for some additional Q&A. So here's a question that I actually ask my own agency clients all the time. A lot of agencies come to WordStream for specific reasons, one of which is, what happens when you have more paid search clients than you actually have in days in the week? This is typically what happens to your agency when you have way too many clients than days in the week, and you're not using some sort of kind of management protocol. You don't have systems in place to really make sure that your clients are getting all the attention they need, but you're also giving your management consultants the time that they need to work on the accounts. This is the state that I see a lot of agencies come to WordStream in, looking for a solution on those lines. Not to scare you a bit, but this webinar might have some hard truths to it. So we're definitely going to take everything kind of with a grain of salt here. We're going to try and throw in some humor, but definitely take note that we're concerned about agencies that find themselves in this situation, and hopefully these tips are really going to help you out in terms of, let's say, getting out of the nuclear fallout of a of an overloaded agency. So the first topic is actually just how to prioritize your client list. So what we're talking about here is kind of looking at your list of clients and saying, who should I be devoting the most time to? How much time should I actually be spending on these accounts? And what is the best way to really determine who we should prioritize? So Chris and I have kind of worked together in planning this webinar, and we've talked back and forth over what we use as just a general measure in terms of how much time we want to spend on clients and how we prioritize those clients. So the first thing we're going to look at is agency MRR. That's monthly recurring revenue. That is typically the #1 account that you should be looking into, the one that's delivering the most recurring revenue to your agency. It should be kind of a no-brainer there. Certainly the most value being delivered to your business should be the one that's probably getting the most attention. Looking to the next step, beyond that, total AdWords and Bing spend combined. Typically those accounts that are much larger in those arenas are the ones that you're going to want to pay a little bit more attention to. I would put a little bit less concern on the needs level of the client. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but some clients can come in being extremely needy. Some can probably have no sense of what AdWords is, and they're just kind of letting you go and kind of touch it on your own. They won't even want to worry about it. But at the end of the day, need level of the client is probably farther down on the list in terms of how you're prioritizing your list. And then finally, this might surprise some of you, but account size. If the account is extremely large, e-commerce accounts can get very, very large depending on all the product sets and kind of everything that you're running there. Despite that size, you should still be focusing on the accounts that are driving the most value towards your agency, and they're really, your true revenue streams there. So, I have a metaphor here. You might see the little myth of Sisyphus graphic on the right-hand side, but what we're talking about here, AdWords and PPC is your rock, right? As an agency, you're giving away that service. You're getting people, to enroll with you and to have their accounts managed. So when you need to look at this, you really need to realize maybe the metaphor is such that every single day you're rolling the rock of AdWords up the hill and it's kind of coming back down. And what you need to understand is that this is your thing. This is what you have to do, managing these PPC accounts. So what you need to do is you really need to take close note as to which ones you need to prioritize over, because this is the thing that you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. We're going to try and make it easier for you with these tips, but certainly keep these things in mind and really want to just start out by saying that this is how you should look at prioritizing your list and kind of moving off of that. We'll kind of go forward with the next slide. So right here, this is more of a discussion on when to actually interact with your clients. How often should you be talking with your clients? Kind of the simple equation here is the level of interaction that you have with your clients should be really based on the maturity of the account, so how long you've actually been managing the account, or even how old the account is in terms of its historical data and its past successes, in addition to the actual need level of the client. So there's plenty of experiences here. Just a little background on myself. I hear all different types of agencies speaking to me about this issue. So I've worked with kind of your standard, what I would call like the bedroom agency, the one guy who just started his business out of his house and is running an agency after many years of potentially working in ad agencies over the course of his career. I've also talked to plenty of agencies that are well established. They have entire consulting teams. You're either talking to a director or maybe the owner of that agency. So I've heard a lot of different angles from the clients that I work with. And this is kind of the general equation that I always go to when they're asking me about how often should I really be communicating with my clients. When you have a very mature account, one that you maybe have been managing for upwards of a year, that's pretty much a good benchmark there. You should be looking to pretty much have a touch point with those clients maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. At that point, you should have established some level of trust with the client that's going to allow them to know that the work that you're doing in the background is actually going to be very effective. They can trust you. And really all they might need is just some level of kind of monthly reporting. Those are definitely the best clients to have. It takes a little bit to get them there. But once again, those clients are the ones that at certain points you're probably kind of weaning them off of constantly contacting you and wondering what's going on in their account. All this kind of comes back into managing expectations and making sure that your clients kind of truly understand the goals that they're trying to attain through AdWords and how you're going to attain those goals through your own work. So when you have kind of, that set of expectations, you need to continually work that into your clients, either in your weekly calls, your bi-monthly calls. I mean, it's really important to make sure that clients understand exactly how often you're going to be contacting them, exactly how often you're going to be reporting results to them. And in the beginning stages, many of these clients might be coming to you and saying, hey, Jeff, my leads have dropped off by 5% in the past day. Well, as AdWords managers, we kind of look at it and say, that's great. Well, what happened in the last 30 days? So there's really, you need to kind of manage these expectations and temper people down from being super aggressive in terms of the reporting and contacting you consistently. If you're having a weekly call with clients and that's kind of your standard protocol, you're going to find yourself having more calls throughout the week than you will time to actually manage the accounts. So please try and make sure that you're keeping most of your calls to like maybe 2 times a month. If you can, ideally on more mature accounts, you should be looking at maybe 1 call a month and probably just that single monthly report, unless you fashion some sort of agreement where you have even more consistent reporting, in which case you should look into an automated reporting solution. So kind of in summary with this, you need to stick to the schedule. I cannot tell you how many times I've had clients schedule calls with me that are agency owners and they don't show up to the call. I've sent them the invite, I've sent them the calendar invite, they have all the information, I get the confirmation from them, and then they don't show up. So I send them an email maybe like 5 minutes later saying, hey, I'm on the line now, we need to speak. That doesn't look good. You need to make sure that you're sticking to your schedule, that you're giving the client the exact expectations that they should really deserve from you so that they know when they're going to be on the phone with you, when they're going to be getting reports from you. It seems like a no-brainer here, but from my own experience, agencies have had a tough time with this. and being very consistent in their reporting and their call times with clients. So at the end of the day, stick to your schedule, manage your expectations up front, and really keep that authoritative voice going to make sure that people are sticking to your schedule in the way that you want to manage things. So this next section is going to talk about kind of how to present opportunities to clients. So this is more getting into, now you have the client, you've kind of set your expectations early on, you have the schedule, you know kind of what your touch points are going to be with this person. Now, during those touch points, it's kind of a carrot and stick game, because really what you don't want to do, and I've gotten myself into this trouble before, is kind of present to your client this grand list of schemes and opportunities and just all these different services that you can use, and remarketing, you can do remarketing for search ads, you kind of put this huge list in front of them, right? And you think that you've kind of delivered the treasure trove of information that they're looking for. You think that they're going to look at this list and be like, wow, agency A actually gave me 16 opportunities versus agency B only gave me about 6 of these when I first started working with them about a year ago. Well, you can get into a bad situation by presenting lists in that format. And what I mean by that is when you give yourself, or when you promote one of those lists, obviously you're giving yourself that work. And a lot of clients are going to expect that work to be done within a fairly short time frame. So you need to kind of do that carrot and a stick approach, right? Have your list of opportunities, maybe right when you start vetting out the client in your RFP, you identify like 6 to 10 just core opportunities in the account. They could be very, very basic. They could be more advanced. Prioritize those opportunities and present them one at a time. If some of them overlap into each other, that's totally fine. But what you need to make sure is that on your actual calls with clients, you're not just kind of throwing a huge list at them and then suddenly they're expecting the world from you. That's going back into this kind of manage expectations discussion. So at the end of the day, first you're going to look to demonstrate your mastery through all of the work that you're doing in the account. And you're doing this by presenting those consistent recommendations. Again, you're not putting them into this big full list on your first call with the client. You're kind of keeping things in your back pocket. You're keeping things that you can continually kind of put out there as the maturity of the client grows. So again, don't present opportunity lists, present those single actionable opportunities, and that's going to allow you to impress clients by consistently recommending those new opportunities. Despite the fact that you may have identified, a new remarketing opportunity a month past, if you know that it's going to take you up to that time to kind of work around the account in all the different areas that you're trying to service, then just keep that in your back pocket. Don't let them know about the opportunity. It might seem like you're kind of keeping your clients out of the loop on something that you're interested in, but it's really going to help you in your management time and making sure that you're not overwhelming yourself with a list of promises that you can't keep. So don't get lost in the weeds. Definitely make sure that you're only kind of working on a few things at a time over the course of a month, and don't give these kind of grand schemes to clients that are going to expect the world from you as a result, because suddenly your list might run out, and that does happen with a lot of mature accounts. You get into a state where everything seems to be working like a well-oiled machine, and at the end of the day you might think, well, there's not much opportunity I can present to the client. But unfortunately, all you've been doing since then is just working off this huge list that you gave them, so you're stuck in a spot where now they're like, well, what else can we do? And then you might actually lose the business. So definitely keep that in mind as you're presenting opportunities. Now, this might be a popular topic, might be one that is also hard to digest a little bit, but I have had many conversations with clients about, agency clients in particular, about when to drop a troublesome client, somebody that's just taking up way too much of your time. Maybe they're paying $3,000 a month for your service and they're expecting a 10K level service, despite the fact that their account's probably only bringing in, maybe less than 5% of your revenue in PPC management. So there are definitely times where you're going to need to actually fire your own clients. I've done it before in my previous agency experience. The conversations are somewhat difficult. However, the way that you need to characterize these things is such that, in order for this person to have better success with their account, they might need to move on from your agency because you might not be able to provide them the level of service that they're expecting. So at times, that can be difficult, but I want to give you some just recommendations as to, when you should be looking to actually fire a client. So these are some kind of key red flags that we have internally at WordStream, whenever we're working with clients and also through our own RFP process. They're just things that we're constantly looking for that are going to tell us whether or not, if this client is worth working with, whether within 6 months after we get their account into an optimized state, are they just going to leave us and kind of go to somebody else? Or are these the kind of people that are going to stay on with us for years at a time, and we're going to be able to form a true working relationship with them, to the point where we might even be able to generate some extra business from them as they move on to new organizations or bring in more clients. So the first thing we're looking at, this is kind of almost, in the RFP process, right? So this is when you're trying to vet out a client. So this is before you've kind of already managed the account and you actually potentially need to fire them. What you're looking for at first are just, in general, outsized expectations. You've been on phone calls all the time with clients. You speak to people all the time, vetting out your leads and trying to find the best opportunities. I'm sure you know when you start a conversation with somebody if this person's expectations are going to be out of line, especially in line with what you're actually offering either on your website or what you're communicating over the phone. When you identify somebody that has, kind of grand dreams of their account, so their goals are something like, I just want to sell more. That's all they're telling you. Those are things that you should really be looking out for, because that tells you that this person maybe doesn't really have a sense of what AdWords really is and how it factors into their business. And so when you have clients that have those kind of outsized expectations, it can get you stuck in a rut. So you might actually have to present that gigantic opportunity list we were talking about, because that's the expectation they have in mind right from the start. Well, once again, you're going to put yourself into a corner where suddenly you have no more opportunities to present, and they're expecting you to have maybe not only yourself or like 2 other people working on the account at the same time and bringing in all these recommendations. So definitely look out for those outsized expectations. When you're having a conversation with these clients and you ask them, what are your goals? Do you have any key performance indicators? Are there any metrics that you're really focused on? If they don't have an answer for you, and trust me, that happens all the time. I talk to clients in the small business space. I talk to agency clients that are obviously addressing these problems with their own clients. It is amazing to me how many times people do not have a goal in mind with paid search, and also don't have any concept of the key metrics that they need to be looking for. They'll probably say something to you like, oh, I'm just looking for more sales, just like I said earlier. Well, okay, so that comes down to conversions. How much do you actually want to pay per conversion? What are you looking for in a CPA figure? If this is sounding like science fiction to your client, that's a red flag. You need to be able to make sure that your client is somewhat educated in what you're doing on the other side of things. So when they're going to enlist you for this service at whatever price level you're at, it's actually important to know that they might have that they have some sense of what you're actually doing in the background. They don't have to be experts, but they definitely have to have some knowledge of how they want this to perform for them and how it factors into their strategic marketing goals. So another red flag. Do they have any sort of analytics platform that allows you to get additional data like Google Analytics? If they don't have a connection like that, that can be a major red flag. So if you don't have any additional access to some of those advanced metrics, certainly going to be a red flag there, because you're not going to be able to get any of the additional data that you need on their website performance. Remember, with AdWords, we're bringing people to a text ad, and then they're clicking to go to a landing page that is some asset on your client's website. Well, you can create the greatest PPC campaign in the world, but if their website is terrible, then really you're not going to get too far. And if they don't have those advanced analytics, you're not going to be able to necessarily tell that the website is terribly performing. But if you don't have the opportunity to kind of look at bounce rate, to look at the visitor flow or anything like that, certainly that's going to make your life a lot more difficult in managing the account and getting it to a point that is going to be optimal for you and the client. A couple of red flags. Are they a lead reseller? You should probably just wash those out of your lead list right now. You don't want to deal with them. Coupon sites, probably don't want to deal with those either. Has their account ever been suspended? How many times has it been suspended? If it has been suspended, 50-50 shot, you're probably not going to work with them anymore. Likely, they're either working on an initiative to improve their site so that it don't get suspended in the future, or improve their marketing language. If you don't see that going on, that's a concern. Probably should back out of that opportunity. Again, kind of going off of that negative Better Business Bureau review, if that does come up and it looks pretty bad, you can save yourself a headache and probably back out of that opportunity as well. In our own experience at WordStream, there are definitely some top kind of violating business types that typically get flagged by AdWords, or are the ones that are very difficult to manage and pretty much have fairly poor performance across the board. Pharmaceuticals, very difficult, highly regulated industry. Dietary products, lots of fishy language around that. Health products are kind of the same way. Gambling sites, a lot of them are going by the wayside, so you're not seeing a lot of them more, but still red flag if you're trying to manage an account on that. Gaming sites as well. Just really there are accounts that typically bring up copyright issues and violations along those lines. Lending services, the regulation is extremely heavy there, and it can be very difficult to create some sort of incentivizing offer that's actually worth promoting through paid search. And then obviously kind of flowing into this whole recommendations, any of those heavily regulated industries are the ones that you need to kind of take a second look at, because those are the ones that are going to really throw up some roadblocks occasionally as you're working on the accounts. So just as a summary here and kind of what we've been going over in terms of workflow and kind of prioritizing your work and making sure you're identifying the right clients, you need to give priority to certain accounts. Don't attempt to manage everything equally. It's not going to be able to happen. Like we said, when you have more clients than days in the week, you might want to spend just as much time with each one of those clients, but really prioritize based on that revenue, recurring revenue first, and then kind of work your way down based on their AdWords spend, and then the need level of the client, and then maybe the account size kind of being that last figure there. Manage expectations very early on. Do not be afraid to use an authoritative voice. You need to make sure that you're being upfront and that you have no maybes in your conversation. You need to have concrete promises and a concrete schedule. Otherwise, you will get lost in the weeds, and it's going to make your life very difficult. When you're presenting opportunities, look for single, actionable opportunities. Do not overwhelm yourself and your client with one of those huge lists of things that you can change in their account right away. Work your way up, keep things in your back pocket, and you'll consistently impress your client in your weekly, bi-weekly, or even monthly meetings. And then also recognize that some clients do need to move on, especially for your own self-preservation. If you see any of those red flags after you've maybe taken a client on, and maybe you're seeing those here now and you're like, I think I have a couple of those that might fit the bill. Consider having a conversation not with the client but other members of your team and seeing what that account is doing to them over a daily basis. If they're clearly spending way too much time on that account as a result of a needy client and one that is meeting a good amount of violations, that's something where you need to consider potentially firing that client. Finally, kind of my big summary here for workflow and just the most important thing in managing clients. This comes from my own consulting experience with a small agency and now working with all types of agencies and also smaller business clients. Mastering your authoritative voice through education and demonstration. Being able to be as educated as you can so you are always an expert over and above your client is going to be a complete asset to you as an agency. This might, again, be a no-brainer, but a lot of agencies come to me with very, very limited PPC knowledge, and yet they're still selling the service. So it concerns me a little bit when I'm the one kind of giving them these basic recommendations on something like match types. Well, if that's the case, then you need to go back and really make sure that you're teaching yourself these things so you know them to your core. Remember, AdWords in this case is your rock. This is the thing you're pushing up the hill every single day, and you're rolling it back down and pushing it up. We're going to try and make life easier with these coming recommendations on account structure. But at the end of the day, if you're not continually educating yourself and you're not trying to promote yourself as a complete master of AdWords to your client, you're going to erode trust over time and potentially lose some business. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Chris Panetta, who's a paid search strategist here at WordStream, and he's going to take you through some very specific account recommendations that should help you manage your clients.
Hey guys, so as Jeff just said, I'm going to walk you through some of the do's and don'ts and best practices of account structure and really just making sure that you're not making more work for yourself than you need to from poor structure. So first I'm going to start off with e-commerce, then I'll do the same thing for lead gen. Here with e-commerce, we have the necessities. Extensions, site links, always, 100%. Whether it's linking back to a specific product page, the contact us form, or a product category, you need to have them, 100% every time. Call extensions, if it's applicable, definitely run it. If you're going for solely online and solely actual e-commerce, instead of actually having people call in, I'm not going to recommend you do it then, but if you're looking for leads, either if you're selling a bigger, expensive product, whether that's a $100,000 medical device or a $50,000 piece of server equipment, people are going to take some time to think about that and do some research. So there's a bigger buying cycle, so having a number up there might actually be a good thing because they might be looking for someone to call. Location extensions, again, if applicable, if you have a brick and mortar store or an office that you handle returns at, it's always good to have that there as well. And then review extensions, again, if applicable. If you have independent websites or publications or magazines reviewing your product or your service, and you can get those reviews and get those certified through Google, it's definitely something you should be running. And then with ad formats, this is a pretty basic thing, but just making sure you're running text ads, product listing ads on the search network is a huge thing, although that is now being known as Google Shopping. Image ads on the display network, so what you're going to be using for remarketing or just your general display targeting. And then dynamic remarketing ads on the display network, and those take their cue from the product listing ads feed and actually will take items from the product feed and dynamically insert them into an ad. So you have an ad that's showing a person 4 or 5 products they've looked at on your website, and it has a price and a description. And historically, I've seen much better performance out of dynamic remarketing than just regular static image ads with remarketing, just because of that point that they have the products they viewed in front of them with a price. And then campaign types here. So we have regular and dynamic remarketing, with both always a necessity to run. Dynamic only if you have a shopping feed up. If you do, it's 100% you need to have that up and running in the account. PLA and Google Shopping, again going back to dynamic remarketing, this is something that every e-commerce website and company should be running. We see huge returns and huge dividends with PLAs and Google Shopping, to the point that for me personally, most of my e-commerce clients actually get at least 60% of their revenue from AdWords through these product listing ads. They're a huge thing right now that Google's really starting to push and promote, and it's going to be one of the future major drivers of revenue for a lot of these e-commerce companies. Then we have display ads, as I just touched on, your static image ads or your flash ads, kind of drawing people in. It's always recommended to have a display presence, even if you're an e-commerce company, because a display presence does lead to search network clicks. I won't get into details or specifics on that, but there is a few studies that have been published recently that will outline that fact and back it up with hard data. And then the search network, obviously, you want to have stuff running on the search network. Somebody searching for Nike shoes or Air Jordans, if you're selling those, you want to show up, so you need those search ads. And then we have the key performance metrics here for e-commerce. So you have total conversions, cost per conversion, cost per click, conversion rate, average position, total conversion value, and conversion value to cost. And I'm going to go through these bullet by bullet. So total conversion, self-explanatory. E-commerce, your bottom line is how much you sell and how much revenue you generate from that. So total conversions is the most important thing. Next up is cost per conversion, because your e-commerce, you're usually dealing with a pretty set margin. Whether that's 10, 15, or 30%, you know what it is. So you can't let your cost per conversion spiral out of control, because then you're just eating away at your margin to the point where if you're selling something, you might be losing money from selling it. Cost per click, this is an important thing to manage just in terms of managing your budget and your daily traffic flow. You don't want to set your cost per click so high that you're getting a $5, you're paying for a $5 click when you could be paying $3 for it just because your bid's set higher than it needs to be. And to kind of manage that, we recommend starting out somewhere where you think is a good fit. I usually recommend $1.25 for e-commerce clients, and then if you see your average positions really low, or that you're just not getting a lot of clicks, or you're just not even getting a lot of impressions, incrementally increasing it from there by, say, 25 or 50-cent margins. Conversion rate, this is something that most people forget about, especially dealing with e-commerce clients, but it's something that I take to heart, because conversion rate is really going to be the key performance indicator of whether or not you can scale up, meaning whether or not if you spend more money, you're going to see a return on that money, or you're just going to see your cost per conversion rise. So if you have a good conversion rate and a good click-through rate, that's a very good sign that if you want to increase your budget, you can, and you will most likely see a return on it. If your conversion rate is low and your click-through rate is low, or one or the other, that's usually a red flag that says, hey, I need to fix something in this campaign or this ad group before I increase the budget, because the increase in budget isn't going to be spent efficiently, and it might just hurt our bottom line by increasing that cost per conversion. Average position is another huge one. There's a lot of companies that kind of make their their revenue and their income just by targeting low average positions because they think they can get the clicks really cheap, which they can. But at the same time, they're hurting themselves because, let's be honest, nobody really looks past the top 3 ads anymore on Google. So you want to be in one of those top 3 positions. I usually recommend somewhere around 2.2 to 2.4. That way you're ensuring that you're still showing in the #1 position a lot of the time and the #2 position a lot of the time, and then only occasionally the 3rd position. So you're really holding down that top 1 or 2 spot, but you're not overpaying. To that point, I recommend trying to stay away from position 1.0, 1.5, unless it's for your specific brand. Those you want to be #1, but for everything else, the top 3 ads are really the same. Someone looks at the first ad, they're going to look at the second ad and the third ad. It's when you get beyond those that people don't really look at. So there's no real benefit to trying to bid for that #1 position over that #2 position. Total conversion value. This is something that is a little bit more difficult to set up. You have to work with the Google tracking code or the analytics tracking code, depending what we're using, and kind of set it up with your webmaster. It's not really something I'm going to go into, but once you do get it set up, it is incredibly helpful because it can show you how much money each campaign or each keyword is driving to your bottom line. And then on that, conversion value to cost, this is just another fancy way of saying return on investment. So for each conversion I get, what is my return on that conversion? So similar or the same as ROI, or return on investment, you want that to be a higher number above 1. 1.0 means you're breaking even. Anything below 1.0 means you're losing money, and anything above 1.1 or 1.1 or above means you're making money. Whether it's you're spending $1 and making $1.10 at 1.1, or you're spending $1 and then making $5 at 5.0. Next up is lead generation. So it's kind of the same structure as I just went through before, but this time talking about lead generation. So site links, again, 100% necessity. Every account, doesn't matter what you do, e-commerce, lead gen, if you're a mix of that, doesn't matter. You need to have site links. Call extensions. This is usually not something I recommend you don't do. This is something that I say every lead generation company should have. Even if you're trying to go for form fill-outs or free trial fill-outs or demo fill-out, you still want to have that number up there because your lead generation, you typically don't have a physical product you're selling, so the customer is going to be more inclined to call you and try and ask you a couple questions or ask your sales team a couple questions before they purchase. Location extensions, again, this one is only if applicable, and it's usually not for lead generation companies because they don't have a brick and mortar office or a store. They only have an office, and they usually don't want random people showing up to their office. But if you do have an office with a reception area or any reason that you might want people to show up, go ahead. And review extensions. Again, if you have the third-party accredited reviews and you can get those uploaded to Google, this is something I recommend you do. Ad formats, we're kind of more or less the same as e-commerce. The only difference you'll notice there is probably engagement ads. So text ads, the search network, again, obvious, you need those. Those should be the first thing you make, actually. And that's just because you're going to lose out on a lot of business if you're not on the search network. That's the primary conversion driver for both e-commerce and lead gen. Image ads on the display network, as I said before, having a display presence is crucial now more than ever, as more and more studies are coming out saying having a display presence leads to search network clicks and search network conversions. And that's more of just a branding thing. People get familiar with your brand, and you can also have some catchier ads than your standard black and white text ads. So you can have a flash ad with something to catch their eye, maybe an arrow moving across the screen, or you can have an image ad with your product or your brand name. Remarketing ads, unfortunately, because this is lead gen and not e-commerce, we are stuck with just regular remarketing, no dynamic remarketing. But again, remarketing is something every account should be running, whether it is e-commerce or lead gen. And then engagement ads. This is something new, and some of you might already have seen these live. Google's only recently started to roll this out of beta into accounts over the past 2 months. And what this is, it's a combination of the display network and a video ad. It's an engagement ad. It's a very good description for it. What happens is you'll have an image that will say hover over to start this ad. You might have your brand name in there too, and maybe a brief description. So someone hovers their mouse over that ad for 2 seconds, and then a video will start to play. That video can be anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute. I don't really recommend going over a minute, because after that, it's just really hard to keep people's attention no matter what you're talking about. And even then, I recommend 30 seconds, because you'll then be able to reuse that video for other publication needs, or even video ads through the YouTube function in AdWords. And then at the end of that engagement ad, once the video is done, another image will pop up that can say, click here to continue to website, or click here to find out more. And it's just a really interesting way to kind of look at the display network, because it's not just a click. People are actually engaged in your ad, so it's kind of another layer of filtering down the quality of your lead. And I'm running this actually on 2 accounts right now of my own that are lead gen. One is based in New Zealand and one is based here in the US. And they're both doing really well. They have click-through rates of 2.4 and 3.2 respectively. And then the click-through rate is the same as engagement rate for these ads. And we have very good a number of conversions and a very good cost per conversion on these ads. It's actually a little bit cheaper than your standard display network, because people are more inclined to engage with these ads. And then your basic campaign types, remarketing, as I said before, that's standard. That's something you should be running in every single account, every single time. Display, again, every single account, every single time. Search, and then engagement. Pretty much similar to the ad format, if you will. And then here we have the key performance metrics. You're going to notice there aren't as many as e-commerce, and that's just because with lead generation, we're not tracking revenue in the sense that we are with e-commerce, so there's less to look at, would be one way to say it. So we're still looking at total conversions, but in this case, it's more important for these overall conversions, and I think this is going to be the most important metric for any lead generation company. From my personal experience, these lead generation companies usually have a little bit of flexibility in their cost per conversion. If it goes up $5 or maybe even $10, they're not as concerned as long as they're getting more conversions. They're all about conversion volume. And to that point, conversion rate is the same with e-commerce. You want to look at this because it'll tell you kind of the health of your campaign and whether or not it has some scalability to it. And then average position. Again, you just want to be going for that position 2.0 to 2.4 range. So you're not breaking the bank by overbidding, but you're not hurting yourself by underbidding and getting into an average position where, quite frankly, no one's just going to see your ad. And then from there, for lead generation companies, one of the more important things that I've noticed is click volume. They're really concerned with just getting as many people to their website as they can so that we can, A, tag them with remarketing and then have them in that list for 30, 60, 90, or however many days you have your list set up. And it's also just to raise more awareness so that their company and their brand is in that potential customer's head, so they'll come back to them. And then click-through rate. This is another indicator of a campaign and account health. Obviously, the higher the click-through rate, the better, but it's a little bit different. So Google says your average click-through rate on the search network is 1%, but the average click-through rate on the display network is 0.1%. So you just kind of got to use those as your benchmarks and go from there. But click-through rate is a very good indication of how well your campaigns and accounts performing, how targeted it is, are you reaching your target audience, and then again, can you scale up? If you have a good click-through rate, you're almost always likely to scale well with an increase in budget. And then here I'm just going to touch on campaign and ad group naming conventions. And this is for any client. This is not specific to e-commerce or lead generation. So here, the structure I like to use is a 3-prong naming convention for the search network, where we have primary, secondary, and tertiary. So if I want to have a campaign of core terms essential to my brand, whether that's my actual brand name or the name of a product I sell, I'm going to have those in the primary campaign. And the reason for that is primary is just those are my core terms. Those are the ones that I value the most, that I'm going to bid on more so than other terms, because I know that these are targeted terms that are going to give us a return. Secondary terms are where you get into a little bit more vague terms. So say I'm going back to the shoe example again. So where your primary term, if you're selling Nike shoes, would be Nike shoes, your secondary term might just be black shoes or brown shoes or striped shoes. And then your tertiary term is your really reach terms. You're not really expecting these to do anything, but you kind of want to see if maybe there's a term there that you didn't think about before but might actually be bringing in some traffic that you're missing on. This is a little bit of a trickier area when you're dealing with clients, because they're usually hesitant to get down to the tertiary level. And it's something that I recommend only for mature accounts when you're kind of hitting your plateau and struggling to find new things or new terms or new keywords to expand upon. And for back to the shoe example, so where Nike shoes would be your primary, brown shoes would be your secondary, your tertiary term here might just be shoes, because you don't necessarily want to bid on that because you're going to spend a lot of money on that, and it's not a very targeted term if you're only selling Nike shoes. Or you might just say basketball shoes or basketball product might be a tertiary term there. And then for the display network, I just use display, and then for remarketing, I just use remarketing. And when I'm structuring these, it's all about the campaign name. So for a Nike shoe campaign, I would have the campaign name be primary-Nike shoes. For secondary, same thing, secondary-Nike shoes, and then tertiary, same thing, tertiary-Nike shoes. And it just allows easy organization and easy management of the account, because you know where everything is, where you should be spending most of your money in your primary terms, and then if you have any left over in the tertiary or secondary. And then display, self-explanatory. Display just means it's the display network, and then remarketing, self-explanatory there too, just means it's remarketing. And I like to segment out remarketing from display network, because although they're both on the display network, they really are completely different animals in what they do. And then ad groups, I just like to use it based on keywords. I will be the first person to preach that you don't want a lot of keywords in your ad groups. And my personal preference is to actually just have one keyword on all 3 match types per ad group, and that way I am able to highly target the ad text, and the landing page if necessary, as well as just know that this ad group is only this keyword, so this ad group is the sum of how this keyword is performing across all 3 match types. Now, that's it for the actual bulk of the presentation. Here I'm just going to kind of walk you through some offerings that WordStream has. So we have Grade Your Clients' Accounts with the AdWords Performance Grader Plus. It's a free and instant PPC audit in 60 seconds, and it grades your client's AdWords accounts based on performance of 10 key PPC metrics that really matter. And it compares your client's accounts against other accounts of similar size, and that's monthly spend. And it's completely free and secure to use.
So this is Jeff just chiming in real quick. This is a great tool to use to impress your clients quite a bit up front. You can run this grader. You don't need to let them know that you ran the grader. But you're going to have a report in front of you that you can almost read off verbatim to impress your clients in terms of what you need to do to improve the account. One of the biggest metrics that gets factored into this grader is actually how many actions are taken in the account over a monthly basis. If you're able to present this to a client and say that there's nobody's been touching your account for the past 2 months, and that's a very big problem, you can present yourself in a new way by saying, well, of course we're going to be in your account maybe 4 to 6 hours a week, you know, something along those lines. So certainly feel free to use this as a great presentation tool to your clients. Now, in WordStream's products, the PPC Advisor software products, it's essentially an optimization platform that allows you to kind of manage your PPC account within the software. And the real core element of this software is something called the 20-minute PPC workweek. This is actually a series of 5 alerts that are going to show you the low-hanging fruit in your client's accounts. You can actually go through each 5 of these alerts and review and approve the findings that are in each one of these alerts. They all function on pretty much the ad group level, so we're going to be pulling out recommendations for each ad group. The only one that doesn't work on the ad group level is one called Optimized Keyword Bids, where it looks at all of the keywords in your account and recommends bid settings for those particular keywords. Now, this tool is extremely quick, very easy to use, and also extremely powerful. One of the benefits of using the 20-minute work week for agencies in particular is that it greatly expands your scalability. So when you suddenly have 20 minutes a week and that's all you need to spend in your client's account to actually optimize the account, suddenly the number of clients that you're managing in days in the week can actually double or triple because you have this really kind of peaceful knowledge that you're going to be able to just jump in on a weekly basis, get core recommendations to the account, and improve on the account by just taking action directly from these alerts. So again, it can really improve your client's ROI over time, especially in AdWords. Obviously, if this works cross-functionally with Bing, we'll give you recommendations that you can also assign to your Bing campaigns and accounts as well. So that's a great advantage of the tool. But all in all, it's going to save you a lot of time, help you consolidate your work, and hopefully help scale your agency as well.
Great questions today for you guys. We're just going to run through a couple of these right now. So a question that we had for Jeff was, should I be educating my client in PPC even though I'm managing everything and they hardly know what I'm working on?
My answer is a 100% resounding yes to that question. You can find yourself in pretty damaging situations if you have clients that simply don't know anything about AdWords and then suddenly, something might go wrong. Maybe you're experimenting with something and you don't get the performance you want, and it might impact their costs a little bit. If your client doesn't really have a sense of how the network works and what you're actually doing to kind of take basic optimization steps, those conversations can definitely become pretty heated, and then by the end of it, you feel yourself saying, well, all this could have been prevented if this person just knew what I was trying to do. So I would definitely encourage you to try and get some general PPC education out to your clients. Chances are they might be familiar with it. Maybe they've been managing the account themselves and now need that agency service. But at the end of the day, as a consultant, I'm a big believer in this philosophy that it should be your job to almost create an expert out of your client just as much as yourself. So you should be doing the duty of trying to get them as educated as possible on the inner workings of their account. That's going to factor into just learning about PPC in general. If you're doing your job right, they're going to want to stay with you at the agency, but at the end of it, they should know exactly what they might need to do in order to improve the account. But you're going to be such a good agency and consultant anyway that they're just going to want to stick with you. And they might actually start presenting opportunities to you as well. And you can see that at times your clients will start getting the marketing gears turning a little bit more. And that's definitely a result of just consistent education and consistently making sure that they're aware of the actions that you're taking in the account.
Great. And can you guys just clarify what the difference between account size and actual account spend is?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So account size is just referring to the overall size of the account, the number of campaigns, ad groups, and keywords you have. So you could have an account that has 50 campaigns and 10,000 keywords, but they're only spending $1,000 a month. So that's the real difference there. And then you could have the vice versa of that. You can have an account with 5 campaigns and 100 keywords that's spending $15,000 or $50,000 a month. So that's just the real difference there. Spend is just your AdWords spend, and account size is the overall number of keywords, ad groups, and campaigns in it.
And to add to that, the spend can be greatly impacted by the level of competition in their industry. So you can have clients that have keywords that are worth, it's not unheard of to see upwards of, $20 per click in certain industries. So the thing is that, really it comes down to how much they're actually competing and how much they're willing to spend over time. But you can still see, I actually work with a particular e-commerce account that sells party supplies. Their bids are like, 20 cents on each keyword, and the maximum budget for each of their campaigns, and they have like 30 campaigns, actually probably more closer to 50 campaigns. They're only allocating about $3 to $4 to each one of those because they only want a certain number of clicks over the course of a day. So they have like a really low spend level, but their account can actually be huge. So that's really kind of the fundamental difference there.
Great. And Jeff, I know you touched on setting expectations for clients, and I think both of you guys, this is a question aimed for both of you guys, but what happens if you have a client that is really needy? You set those expectations to them, but they keep calling you, they keep emailing you. What's the best way to kind of set those expectations that you're managing the account and they don't really have to keep checking up and worrying about the account performance?
So my harsh answer to you is you should set those expectations in the contract. So you should allocate a certain number of time that you're able to spend on the phone with the client and make it very clear and have this option available to charge them for additional consulting hours. Don't be afraid to say, hey, this is great, I enjoy our conversations, but because we're spending more time, you're using my expertise, I need to at least factor in some of this into a one-time fee. That's my, it might seem harsh. It's difficult, I understand, to set those expectations very early on, but if you have it in the contract, you always have something to go back onto. I cannot tell you, I went from an agency that was building itself up from the beginning. We rewrote our contracts probably 30 times until we got it right. So it is very clear that, in the vetting out process and getting your client signed on, to actually read through the contract with them, make sure that they're very much aware of all the touch points that you're going to have. And you can analyze that at the beginning of the conversation, at the beginning of the relationship. You'll know how many times you need to meet with them based on their goals, their account size, and what you think you're going to actually need to build for them. I would say start with the contract, though. Now, if you do have a needy client that's consistently calling you on the phone, try and take it to email. That might be another recommendation there. But I think you can really save yourself a lot of time and headaches by making it as explicitly clear as you can in the contract itself.
And to kind of just add on to that, show them the work you're doing. Spend one of your calls just walking through what you might be doing in the account. It really goes back to that education point. You want to educate your client. From my experience, at least, I don't know about Jeff, all the needy clients I've had have just been uneducated, so they want constant updates. They want to know what's going on. And if you educate them and show them the work you're doing and show them, I changed this campaign here, here, and here 2 weeks ago, and now we're seeing the results. If you can show them that, then they become less needy. And I've actually worked off one of my clients who, besides our scheduled weekly call and email correspondence, would call me 2 or 3 times a week with questions that ended up being half-an-hour-long conversations. And I did that. I showed him the work I was doing. I walked him through it. It took a little bit of upfront work, but the dividends are paying off spectacularly now because we only have our weekly call. He doesn't really need to email me anymore because he trusts me in the work I'm doing because he understands it.
Very common experience. I would agree that a lot of the clients that are the neediest are also the ones that need the most education, so that's a big point to emphasize there.
Great. And Chris, you talked a little bit about the dynamic remarketing. Is that something that's really complicated to get set up and get started with for clients?
In an honest answer, if it's a business or a novice client, yes, it's probably going to be something that's hard to set up because they would already have to have either Google Shopping or a product listing ad set up. But for you guys in the agencies who aren't novices, who know your way around AdWords and have probably dealt with Google Shopping or PLAs in the past, it's not. As long as you have that shopping feed or that PLA feed set up, it's actually pretty easy compared to where dynamic remarketing was in beta when I was testing it out. So all you have to really do now is just click a couple buttons, say I want to use dynamic remarketing as the campaign type when you're creating the campaign, and then it'll actually automatically generate a variety of different templated ads for you to use in dynamic remarketing, so you're not even creating them. You can just select which one you think looks the best.
I would also say, too, that with remarketing and especially with product listing ads and the way you need to set it up in order to use dynamic remarketing, when you're setting up product listing ads or Google Shopping, if the client doesn't have it set up at all, you'll need to create the product feed. You'll probably need to do it for them. As a result, you should charge extra for that service up front. You should not factor in PLA build out into your contract unless it is an extra fee. Building out a product list for PLAs can take a lot of time, especially when you have products or clients that have upwards of thousands of different variations in their products. You need to actually enter that into a spreadsheet that you can feed into the Merchant Center. So if you are planning on doing that, if that opportunity presents itself to the client and you think that is going to drive the success, and I'll tell you right now that PLAs do that, as well as Google Shopping, if you plan on setting up that feed, you need to have a one-time fee for that because it is an extremely cumbersome process. It's mindless work when you're doing it, but it takes a while. So definitely charge up front for that if you're thinking about it.
Great. So I think we have enough time for one question here, and thank you everyone for sending all your questions, and we're getting a lot of great responses here. We're getting a lot of questions around mobile PPC. Are there any best practices that you guys or any sort of advice that you guys could give on that?
So on mobile, the first thing you're going to need to find out is if your client actually has a mobile responsive site. If they don't have a mobile responsive site, consider that another opportunity for you as an agency to potentially sell that build-out service. Maybe you have a third party that you partner with that can help build mobile pages. There's a lot of good resources out there. I'd say Duda Mobile is a very good one for creating mobile pages for you. But that's the first thing you need to look into. If they have a mobile optimized site or not, maybe it's just a mobile responsive site, that's totally fine. But if not, still not the end of the world. Obviously mobile traffic is very, very prominent these days. But what you're looking for really on the mobile side is optimizing unique ads around the actual mobile space. So even if your client doesn't have a mobile optimized site, but you can still, find that maybe like 30% of your impressions in a certain number of campaigns or whatnot are pulling in actual mobile traffic, that's going to be a key indicator there to design some mobile preferred ads. And what I mean by mobile preferred is you're creating an ad where you check off, it's literally you check off mobile preferred, and what that means is that Google is going to use those ads specifically for mobile devices. So the changes that you make in those ads are just simply changing language that most caters towards mobile users. So using words like tap to call, tap to shop, things like that, things that can attract kind of the more mobile engaged audience. That's really what you're looking at, especially now with enhanced campaigns. You don't need to differentiate anything by mobile. Really what you're looking at now is trying to get up that mobile responsive site if you can, and then optimizing your text ads and your additional advertisements around that.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much for sharing your insight today. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Again, if you want to run that free AdWords Performance Grader, it really is completely free. So I highly recommend. You're going to gain a lot of valuable insight into your clients' accounts by running that. And as Jeff stated, they don't need to know that you ran this grader report. You can, really impress them and go over really detailed key metrics into their account. You can also run a free trial of WordStream's PPC Advisor, so you'll get a 7-day free trial. So I highly recommend, going in there, start your trial. You get 7 days, nothing to lose. Upload your account and see how you can make improvement. I put Jeff and Chris's contact information on the screen if you guys have any additional questions. But thank you guys again, and everyone have a great day today.